Hello and welcome back to Perspectives. On today's show, something slightly different. Unfortunately, James can't be with us today. He's had a bit of a domestic catastrophe involving a flood in his basement, I do believe. So our best wishes to James, and I hope the flooding gets sorted soon. But in the meantime, anyway, we can continue our show with just a one-man show today. And I'll be bringing you various stories, including a British Sikh MP who's caught telling barefaced lies about Jaggi in his local Gurdwara. As another Sikh MP demands action over Jaggi. Well, just who are our British Sikh MPs loyal to? Is it to the British Sikh community or is it to India? Well, we'll take a look at the evidence. Australia has a new Sikh Heritage Museum. And in Punjab, the announcement of a new world-class university in Anandpur, named after the 9th Sikh Guru. All that and more on today's show. And of course, at the end of the show, we'll take a look at loads of great comments which have been filling up below the video. So thank you, as always, for those. Right, away we go. And what I'm going to start with, James fortunately did actually send through a special report, which I'll show you now. This, of course, is part of the report that he was showing yesterday and didn't have any sound, unfortunately. So anyway, I'll play you now. This is James's special report, and I'll be back with you after this.
Welcome to this special report. We're going to look at the crisis of food security and the logistics of compassion, a comprehensive analysis of North American food banks, community resilience, and corporate citizenship. As the 2025 holiday season approaches, North American society faces a silent but pervasive emergency. Despite stabilizing macroeconomic indicators in some sectors, the lived reality for millions of households in the United States and Canada is one of acute food insecurity. This report provides an exhaustive analysis of the current shortfall facing food banks, the shifting demographics of poverty, and the critical importance of holiday food drives. It examines the sociological dimensions of hunger, specifically the stigma that prevents access, and the philosophy of dignity that underpins the modern food banks. Furthermore, this report represents a detailed case study of the intersection between logistics and philanthropy. It highlights the role of the private sector in operationalizing charity, focusing specifically on Kerry Movers Limited in Surrey, British Columbia. By analyzing Kerry Movers' decade-long commitment to the Surrey Food Bank and other community events like the Aldergrove Family Fair Days, we will illustrate a model of logistical citizenship that stands in stark contrast to the reputational crisis currently plaguing the moving industry. In terms of the geopolitics of hunger in 2024 and 2025, we're going to take a look at the continental context, a tale of two nations. The narrative of food insecurity in 2025 is not of scarcity of production, but of affordability and access. Across both the United States and Canada, the convergence of inflationary pressures on essential goods, stagnant real wage growth for the working class, and housing affordability crisis has created a perfect storm for charitable food networks. In the United States, the data reveals a troubling disconnect between economic recovery, the narratives that we see, and the household realities. By 2024, 14.3% of U.S. households were experiencing food insecurity. That was a sharp increase from 10.2% in 2021. This rise indicates that the post-pandemic recovery has been K-shaped, leaving low to middle income earners behind. Regionally, the situation is even more dire. In the capital area food bank region, a staggering 37% of households reported experiencing food insecurity between May 2023 and May of 2024. This figure underscores that food insecurity is no longer a fringe issue affecting only the chronically unemployed. It has permeated the general population. The crisis is exacerbated by donor fatigue. While overall charitable giving in the U.S. rose by 6.3% in 2024, contributions specifically for hunger relief remained flat. This plateau in support comes at the precise moment when demand is peaking. Food banks are reporting that they cannot rely on seasonal generosity alone. The gap between rising demand and stalled donations is creating a structural deficit in the nation's safety net. Let's take a look now at Canada and the breaking point of the social safety net. In Canada, and particularly British Columbia, the situation mirrors the US, but is compounded by some of the highest housing costs in the world. The 2025 Hunger Report by Food Banks BC paints a picture of a system at capacity. In March 2025 alone, 113,606 individuals accessed a food bank in British Columbia. That is a 9% increase over the previous year and a 44% increase since the onset of the pandemic. Nationally, the demographics of food bank users are shifting. 1/3 of all clients are children, representing nearly 712,000 monthly visits across Canada. Perhaps most alarmingly, the proportion of two-parent households accessing food banks has risen to 23%, up from 18.8% in 2019. This statistic dismantles the stereotype that food insecurity is solely a result of family breakdown or unemployment. Today, two incomes are often insufficient to secure basic nutrition in Canada's major urban centres. The shortfall reported by food banks is not merely a logistical failure, but a symptom of broader economic dysfunction. We can look at several points to this, and number one, of course, the inflationary lag. While headlines are reporting inflation has stabilized, the cumulative price increase of food over 2021 to the 2025 period means that the new normal for grocery bills is structurally higher. The average Canadian household was predicted to spend $800 more on groceries in 2025 compared to 1 year earlier. Housing is the second point, and that is the primary stressor. In markets like Surrey and Vancouver, Toronto, and other major metropolitan areas, rent and mortgage payments consume such a high percentage of household income that the food budget is treated as the only elastic expense. Families starve the grocery budget to save the roof over their heads. And then we have point three, the working poor phenomenon. Data from 2025 indicates a growing share of employed clients accessing food banks. These are individuals with jobs who, due to the cost of living crisis, cannot make ends meet. This demographic shift requires food banks to offer extended hours and more flexible access models, further straining their resources. As we continue on, let's take a look at the sociology and, of course, the philosophy of dignity. To understand the importance of the Christmas food drive, one must first understand the psychological landscape of the beneficiaries. The prompt calls for an emotional story, and raw material for this lies in the profound difficulty of asking for help. There is, of course, the stigma of food insecurity. Now, food insecurity is not just a nutritional state. It's a psychological stressor. Research indicates a strong correlation between food insecurity and mental health declines, including increased rates of depression, anxiety, and suicidal ideation. In high-income countries like Canada and the United States, where wealth is visible, the inability to provide food for one's family carries a heavy burden of shame. This poverty stigma, as some may call it, acts as a barrier to access. Families will often endure months of hunger, skipping meals, or diluting baby formula before they cross that threshold of a food bank. They fear judgment. They fear that accessing charity is an admission of failure. This delay often means that by the time a family reaches out, they are in profound crisis, requiring more intensive support than if they had sought help earlier. Of course, there's also the food bank philosophy, and that is not to judge, not to blame. In response to the stigma, modern food banks, such as the Surrey Food Bank, have adopted a radical philosophy of dignity. As noted in their operational mandate, they exist to not judge, not blame, and not question the clients beyond the necessary intake verification process. This philosophy is operationalized in several ways. First, we look at the environment, and that's where the SFB prides itself on supplying food in a respectful and dignified environment. This means moving away from pre-packed hampers handed out in a lineup to shopping models where clients can choose items that fit their cultural and dietary needs, restoring a sense of agency. Then there's the intake process. While verification is necessary to prevent fraud, it is conducted with sensitivity. The Surrey Food Bank, for example, requires proof of address and income, but the staff are trained to view these documents not as bureaucratic hurdles, but as keys to unlocking the needed support. The provision of registration forms in languages ranging from Punjabi to Tagalog signals to newcomers, you belong here and we understand you. And then there's the lifeline concept. Staff and volunteers view themselves as a lifeline to the community. This reframing shifts the dynamic from benefactor and beggar to community partners. The food bank is a temporary bridge over troubled waters, not a permanent destination. Then we look at the emotional weight of the holidays. The Christmas season amplifies the emotional stakes of poverty. For a parent, the inability to provide a special holiday meal or a gift for a child is a uniquely painful experience. It attacks the parent's sense of worth and their ability to protect their children from the harshness of their economic reality. This is why the Christmas food drive is so vital. It is not only about calories, it is about dignity. When the community donates Christmas hampers containing turkeys, cranberries, or chocolates, they are not just feeding bodies. They are validating the humanity of their neighbors. They are saying, you deserve to celebrate too. The inability of food banks to meet the specific holiday demand, as seen in 2025, where some food banks had to close hamper registrations early due to a lack of supplies, is a heartbreaking failure of community capacity. Now we look at the holiday crucible.
And we'll just stop there. And thank you, James, for that report. And it's actually a very pertinent point to stop there. And of course, as we approach the Christmas celebrations here in the Christian world, I think, or in Christian society, it is a time of giving. And of course, this does reflect very much an element of Sikhi, which is, of course, the selfless service, that the langar forms part of that, etc. It is a time when our minds turn to the most vulnerable in society. And of course, all of us have a moral responsibility and a moral duty to get out there and do our little bit. So well done to James and his family, I know, who've been involved in this. And as I say, this is a time, of course, during the deep winter here in the Northern Hemisphere, when it's, of course, at its coldest. Our thoughts go out to those who are suffering, and thank heavens for those good people in our society who do such work. So well done to them. Right, let's move on. And let me just remind you can watch that full report. I think it's about 20 odd minutes. So you can watch that full report on our Substack channel. So do get yourselves along to our Substack channel and have a look at that full report. And of course, on Substack, you can find all our full reports and our full detailed research, etc., etc. So do get yourselves along to that. And don't forget to leave comments on there as well, because we do read those comments as well. So thank you for that. Right, let's move on. And I'm going to talk about a story or a subject that we talk, sadly, all too frustratingly too often. It is, of course, that of Jagtar Singh Johal. Now, this really matters. Of course, it matters to the Sikh community here in the UK, but really it should matter to all Sikhs around the world. And I do often contrast how the British government, for example, acts and reacts towards India on behalf of our own Sikh population to that of, for example, the United States. And the Trump administration and the Biden administration before that, and of course Canada with Trudeau and now Carney, how do they deal with their Sikh populations? Now, one could pose the question, if a US citizen or a Canadian citizen was imprisoned arbitrarily by India for over 8 years, what would those respective governments do? I suspect an awful lot more than the British government is doing about Jagtar Singh Johal. Now, of course, our audience, I'm sure, are very familiar with the story of Jagtar Singh Johal. He spent over 8 years in arbitrary detention by India, purely for the simple fact that he was researching and put together a website of information about the extrajudicial murders by the Indian state, Indian law enforcement, during the 1980s and 1990s. As a result of that, when he flew across to Punjab to get married, he was bundled into the back of a van and never to be seen again, basically. He was tortured. We do know he was tortured by the Indian state, by Indian police, and he's been in prison ever since. And basically, they've dragged out the judicial process. In fact, that's the wrong term. It's not even a judicial process. It is he's basically a political prisoner, like many others in his situation. Anyway, but the big question is, what have British MPs, what have British members of Parliament, what has the British government been do about it? And as I often rant, sadly, all too often, is not very much. And of course, this subject is raised regularly. It is raised by his brother Gurpreet, who's been hugely active, campaigning, obviously, on behalf of the family to try and free him. He has been meeting with various foreign secretaries over the years since his detainment. And of course, he has a large following, a large group of people who are very active socially as well, trying to raise awareness for the campaign, and again campaigning for his release and to highlight the situation. We have the Sikh Federation UK, for example, another organisation that leads the vanguard from an organisational point of view, again to keep the pressure on British MPs and likewise the British government, whether it was a Conservative government up until last year and now our recent Labour government. Now, of course, we have here in the UK, we have 11 or maybe 12, depending on your interpretation, Sikh MPs. So our Sikh community here in the UK is very well representative, I would say even proportionally represented in our democratic system. We have these 11 Sikh MPs who have a duty and a responsibility to speak up for their constituents, but also to speak up for the Sikh community here in the UK. So the big question is, and there is a big finger pointing at our Sikh MPs, what are you actually doing about this? Well, for example, I'll start off first of all. I've got a couple of videos which I want to show you, just brief videos, showing statements made by various MPs in the Labour Party. This is our government. These are government MPs. First of all, we have Seema Malhotra. She is a government minister from the Foreign and Commonwealth Development Office, basically our Foreign Office. This is her speaking just the other day about Jaggi.
And I want to recognise the work of all the trustees, all the senators, for supporting the whole community in coming together every day and being together at these important moments, but also for raising today the case of Jaggi Singh Johar. I know he is on our minds so much, and over 8 years has, as we know, been in jail in India, and many events I have also been to previously in Parliament. It is important, and we do, continue to raise his case with the Indian government, and also that I continue to keep in touch with his Member of Parliament, and that the Foreign Office continues to support his family and to support him as much as possible in India. And I know as well that this will be a matter that we will continue to discuss as we hope for progress in his situation.
Now, okay, all well and good. Thank you, Seema Malhotra, a government minister who works for the Foreign Office. I mean, yeah, she says we care, we're doing what we can. But as I always have to keep reiterating, well, why is nothing being done about it? Why did we sign a trade deal? Why are we been focusing on a trade deal? And yet we seem to have buried this. You make all these statements continually. When you are ever asked about it, pressed about it, you make these statements. This MP, this government minister, appears in the Gurdwara in Southall here in the UK to make the statement. Yeah, I mean, we've heard it all before, but what actually are you doing? What practical results have you got to show for this? All we've got to show is a trade deal. We've shaken hands. We've seen Starmer, your leader, shaking hands with Narendra Modi. You keep telling us, we keep raising it, but what have you done about it? What have you actually achieved over it, other than you've achieved a trade deal? Where was the condition that we would only sign a trade deal once you released Jagtar Singh Johar? That never entered the equation. And to make matters worse, this is a Sikh MP, a gentleman called Gurinder Singh Josal, speaking just the other day in another Gurdwara. Now this is more concerning.
ਹੁਣ ਇੱਕ ਮੈਂ ਐਗਜ਼ਾਮਪਲ ਦਿੰਦਾ ਹੁਣ ਜੱਗੀ ਜੌਲ ਦਾ ਮਸਲਾ ਹੈ ਹੁਣ 8 ਸਾਲ ਹੋ ਗਏ ਜੱਗੀ ਜੌਲ ਉੱਥੇ ਜੇਲ੍ਹ 'ਚ ਆ ਤੇ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਪਿਛਲੀ ਗਵਰਨਮੈਂਟ ਸੀਗੀ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਕੋਈ ਉਹਨੂੰ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਬ੍ਰਦਰ ਨਾਲ ਨਹੀਂ ਕੋਈ ਗੱਲਬਾਤ ਕੀਤੀ ਕਦੇ ਨਹੀਂ ਉਹਨੂੰ ਮਿਲੇ ਅਸੀਂ ਮੇਕ ਸ਼ੋਰ ਕੀਤਾ ਹੁਣ ਮੇਰੇ ਖਿਆਲ ਇਸ ਵੀਕ ਹੁਣ ਜੱਗੀ ਜੌਲ ਦਾ ਗੁਰਪ੍ਰੀਤ ਜੌਲ ਦੀ ਤੀਜੀ ਮੀਟਿੰਗ ਹੋਣੀ ਆ ਫੋਰਨ ਸੈਕਟਰੀ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਉਹ ਵੀ ਜੂਨੀਅਰ ਮਿਨਿਸਟਰ ਨਾਲ ਨਹੀਂ ਫੋਰਨ ਸੈਕਟਰੀ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਸੋ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਪਿਛਲਾ ਫੋਰਨ ਸੈਕਟਰੀ ਸੀ ਉਹਦੇ ਨਾਲ 2 ਮੀਟਿੰਗਾਂ ਹੋਈਆਂ ਹੁਣ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਨਵੀਂ ਫੋਰਨ ਸੈਕਟਰੀ ਉਹਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਵੀ ਮੀਟਿੰਗ ਹੋਊਗੀ ਪਿਛਲੀ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਮਿਨਿਸਟਰੀਅਲ ਟੀਮ ਸੀ ਫਿਰ ਅਸੀਂ ਇਹ ਵੀ ਕੀਤਾ ਸੀਗਾ ਵੀ ਮੰਥਲੀ ਮੀਟਿੰਗ ਹੋਊਗੀ ਉਹਦੀ ਮਿਨਿਸਟਰ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ। ਉਹ ਮਿਨਿਸਟਰ ਹੁਣ ਬਦਲ ਗਈ ਆ ਅਤੇ ਹੁਣ ਅਸੀਂ ਚਾਹੁੰਦੇ ਵੀ ਅਸੀਂ ਹੋਪਫੁਲੀ ਉਹ ਵੀ ਹੁਣ ਦੁਬਾਰਾ ਫਿਰ ਸ਼ੁਰੂ ਹੋਊਗੀ ਵੀ ਉਹ ਮੰਥਲੀ ਮੀਟਿੰਗ ਹੋਇਆ ਕਰੂਗੀ। ਉਹਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਇੱਦਾਂ ਵੀ ਜੋ ਇਨਫੋਰਮੇਸ਼ਨ ਗੁਰਪ੍ਰੀਤ ਕੋਲ ਹੈਗੀ ਆ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨਾਲ ਸ਼ੇਅਰ ਕਰ ਸਕਦੇ ਹੋ, ਉਹਨਾਂ ਕੋਲ ਹੁੰਦਾ ਉਹਨੂੰ ਫਿਰ ਪਤਾ ਹੋਊਗਾ ਵੀ ਕੀ ਹੋ ਰਿਹਾ। ਹੁਣ ਇਹ ਕਈ ਚੀਜ਼ਾਂ ਆਪਾਂ ਮੀਡੀਆ ਵਿੱਚ ਨਹੀਂ ਕਰ ਸਕਦੇ, ਇਹ ਬਿਹਾਈਂਡ ਕਲੋਜ਼ ਡੋਰ ਤੋਂ ਮੀਟਿੰਗਾਂ ਹੁੰਦੀਆਂ ਅਤੇ ਇੱਦਾਂ ਹੋਣੀ ਚਾਹੀਦੀ, ਸੋ ਆਪਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਉਹ ਵੀ ਰਿਸਪੈਕਟ ਕਰਨਾ ਚਾਹੀਦਾ। ਪਰ ਉਹ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਚੇਂਜ ਆਇਆ ਪਿਛਲੀ ਗਵਰਨਮੈਂਟ ਨੇ ਕੀਤਾ, ਲੇਬਰ ਗਵਰਨਮੈਂਟ ਨੇ ਕੀਤਾ ਵੀ ਹਾਂ ਅਸੀਂ ਜ਼ਰੂਰ ਤੇਰੇ ਨਾਲ ਗੱਲ ਕਰਨੀ ਆ, ਸਾਡੇ ਨਾਲ ਫੈਮਿਲੀ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਸਾਡੇ ਨਾਲ ਗੱਲ ਕਰੋ, ਅਸੀਂ ਜਿੱਦਾਂ ਵੀ ਅਸੀਂ ਕਰ ਸਕਦੇ ਅਸੀਂ ਕਰਦੇ ਹਾਂ।
What a surprise, an MP who's lying. But the question is why? Why would he lie? Interestingly, and to put this into context, Gurinder Singh Josan MP, when he was talking about Jaggi, he obviously lied several times on camera there. He actually, the Sikh Federation UK signed a cross-party parliamentary letter to the government, pressuring the government about various things, not least Jagtar Singh Jehal. He was one of the Sikh MPs who signed this letter saying you must free Jagtar Singh Jehal. But then, for those of you who watched our show at that time, he withdrew his signature for no reason. So in other words, he supported it, and then he changed his mind. So this Sikh MP, who's actually just stood up there and said, "Oh, we're doing everything we can to free Jagtar Singh Jehal," withdrew his signature from a crucial letter signed by other Sikh MPs and other MPs and various other people on behalf of the Sikh Federation UK. But he withdrew his signature. In other words, why? And the question at the time is, who was pressuring him? And the question was actually, the accusation was raised at the time from various quarters, not least in the Sikh community. Is this guy being pressured by Hindutva? Is he actually working on behalf of Hindutva forces from India? Why on earth did he withdraw his signature? He should be doing absolutely the opposite. And yet again, likewise here, he comes on and talks absolute nonsense on camera. And he as they said, as people have said, he's spouting barefaced lies. So again, it does raise the question, why are British Sikh MPs doing so little about one of their own who was arbitrarily detained in India? And I have to point the finger, for example, at Tan Desai, who is a senior government minister. Preet Kaur Gill. Now, Preet Kaur Gill has done some sterling work, and actually Tan Desai, they've both done great work as Sikh MPs for the nation, let's say, and in other areas. But what have they actually done about Jagtar Singh Johal? This has to be a crucial part of their responsibility, because again, who else is speaking up for Jagtar Singh Johal? His own MP, of course, Douglas McAllister, is very vocal, and well done to Douglas McAllister, who has been extremely vocal, his own MP. But one has to point the finger at many of the other Sikh MPs. Why are you not more vocal? Particularly the more senior, more experienced, more longer serving Sikh MPs like Tan, like Preet Kaur Gill. Why are you not being more vocal? Why are you not being a little bit more robust, let's say, with your leaders, with your senior leaders in the Labour Party about Jagtar Singh Johal? Just what is it that's holding you back? Is it because you are pursuing your own careers and you're too afraid to jeopardise your own careers? That is an accusation that has been levelled as well. Or are you really driven? Are you really genuinely driven by passion for your community, to protect your community? A British citizen, likewise, that again you're ignoring. Again, I often say I'm left a little bit speechless and shaking my head in despair, but it is this. I just find it incredible that our 11 British Sikh MPs, only a handful of them, a very small portion of our Sikh MPs are actually speaking out and actually actively and robustly pressuring our British Prime Minister, who likewise has failed spectacularly in this area, amongst other issues, protecting our Sikh community. It is a deep betrayal. And I think what hurts most, and I'm saying this from outside the community, and I dread to think what the community itself, particularly Jagtar's family, feel about this, but the betrayal isn't just on behalf of the British government, whether it's Conservative or Labour. It is actually from our own Sikh MPs, who should be more active, more robust, more irritating, let's say, become more of a thorn in the side of Starmer to get him to do something about this, to actually bring Jagtar Singh Johal home. As I said, it's deeply saddening that once again, we see betrayals from even within the Sikh community about poor Jagtar Singh Johal. Anyway, let's leave that line now. Let's move on to my next story. Oh, just before I move on, actually, just to sort of lay some facts out here for those who may actually be questioning it. This is actually a table of the various foreign secretaries that Gurpreet, Jaggi's brother Gurpreet, has actually met over the years since 2018, since his arbitrary detention. And Martin Doherty Hughes is Jaggi's original SNP, that's a Scottish National Party MP, before Douglas McAllister took over for Labour. But Gurpreet travelled with Martin Doherty Hughes every time to London to meet each successive foreign secretary, including, and of course, you've got Jeremy Hunt, Rabb, Truss, Cleverly, Cameron. They were Conservative foreign secretaries who, again, did absolutely nothing. And Cameron was actually seen entertaining Narendra Modi. And I have to say, one of the biggest failures there was, of course, David Cameron as a foreign secretary who again, just completely betrayed a British citizen. But then, of course, we had David Lammy, who was equally useless. But even more useless is Yvette Cooper, who met just literally a few days ago. And unfortunately, Gurpreet had to come back from that meeting and just made comments on social media saying it is probably the most disappointing meeting yet. I hate to say it, but I told you so. I mean, Yvette Cooper is, I think, the expression I used at the time, she's a useless blancmange of a politician. Every department that she's ever headed, she's produced nothing. Her results are none. There's no results there. She's a very ineffective MP, so I'm not surprised. It's incredible. It astonishes me she's actually risen to the ranks of as a minister in any government. But anyway, so sadly, that is the story of Jagtar Singh Johal. We will continue to keep the pressure up, and we do look at our British MPs, and I hope our community, actually you yourselves, should, particularly here in the UK, that you will actually keep pressuring your own MPs to speak up for Jaggi. We've got to get him home. This cannot continue, this situation. Right, let's move on. And this is an interesting one, and I'm sure our audience might have some thoughts about this. The Chief Minister of Punjab, CM Man, has announced a new university, a new seat of learning to be established in Anandpur. Now, Sri Anandpur Sahib was declared a holy city just a couple of days ago. In fact, I think a few other cities in the Punjab were declared as holy cities. They are the seats of the Tact. These five holy sites, which are of course led by the Akal Tact, the most senior Tact in the Sikh world in the Punjab. But Sri Anandpur Sahib itself was named as a holy city just a few days ago. I'll talk about in a moment, actually, what the significance of that. But during a special session of the Punjab Vidhan Sabha, Chief Minister Bhagwant Singh Mann announced the establishment of a world-class university, and it will be named after the 9th Sikh Guru, Tegh Bahadur. Now, the announcement came during the concluding ceremony of the government-organised Sarv Dharam Sammelan at the Guru Ka Bagh Baba Buddha Dal Cantonment. Excuse my pronunciations there. And it, of course, was held to commemorate the 350th martyrdom anniversary of that Guru, of the 9th Guru. Now, the Chief Minister said that the proposed university would become, in his words, a global centre for high-quality education, research, interfaith dialogue and studies inspired by the Guru's message of human rights, peace and sacrifice. Fantastic, it sounds. Sri Guru Tegh Bahadur Ji laid down his life for defending the right to faith and freedom. Establishing a world-class university in his name is the least we can do to inspire future generations with his teachings. Now, this is great news, and particularly when we've talked a lot about in Chandigarh, the Punjabi University, which again has been one of the oldest universities established in Punjab. So again, this at least on the face of it, this does appear to be a really fantastic move for the Punjab, and particularly obviously for Anandpur. And the Chief Minister said that the Punjab government was committed to developing Anandpur Sahib not only as a spiritual capital, but as a centre of academic excellence and global learning. He added that the announcement formed part of a broader vision for infrastructural and cultural uplift of the area. Now, again, I have a natural cynicism and suspicion about this because, of course, the Indian government and the Indian state machinery has done its level best to denude, that is dissolve, to try and undermine the industrial and academic base of the Punjab. They fear the power of the Punjab. They fear the power and the potential of the Sikh community. So they've done absolutely everything they can to actually dissolve the infrastructure. So this stands in complete contrast to the general trend of what the Indian government have done. Now, of course, Chief Minister Bhagwant Singh Mann, he's from the AAP party. And there has been an awful lot of politics going on, of course, in that area. And one wonders if this does form part of sort of the local political machinations, to use a big word, that are going on there. Local MLA and Cabinet Minister Harjot Singh Bains thanked the government for making Anandpur Sahib the focal point of historic commemorations, said the Sammelan successfully spread the message of unity among all religions. Again, so the message that's coming out is all very positive. And the announcement, as the Punjab government concluded, it positions Anandpur Sahib for transformative educational and cultural growth. Now, as I said, I'm slightly suspicious about it, but again, maybe particularly any in the Punjab who might be in the audience watching this, if you've got any thoughts about this, again, on the face of it, it seems a really positive step. Anything that promotes learning, that promotes academia, that promotes certainly Punjabi and Sikh heritage, amongst that academia, in the context of academia, has got to be a very good thing. But one wonders, is this some sort of cynical political move, etc.? We do know how the politics in the Punjab has just become rife with sectarian, and I use that word carefully, sectarianism between the BJP and the Hinduism, the saffronization of Punjab, and of course the Sikh democratic voice, and how the politics has been infiltrated by RSS forces. So what on earth is going on beneath the surface here? As I said, it does fly in the face of this trend to saffronize Punjab, to undermine any Sikh culture within the Punjab. Now, just jumping back to this declaration that that Anandpur was declared this historic town as a holy city. What does that actually mean? Well, practically, it announces a ban on meat, liquor, and intoxicants. Of course, those under the Guru Granth Sahib Ji, they are declared as bad things. So, of course, these by declaring these areas, and it includes 3 Sikh towns. It imposes this ban on these 3 elements. And it preserves, as it calls, religious sanctity. And it unanimously declared the walled city of Amritsar, that's Old Amritsar, Anandpur Sahib, and Talwandi Sabu as holy cities in a special session of the State Assembly held at Anandpur Sahib itself. And that itself was also to mark that 350th martyrdom anniversary of Guru Tegh Bahadur. It's a historic move. It's hailed as fulfilling a long-standing demand of millions of devotees. It aims to preserve the religious sanctity and cultural heritage of these Sikh sacred sites. And again, that was announced by the AAP Minister Bhagwant Singh Mann. And it was supported by Arvind Kejriwal, who expressed his strong support for the whole concept. So again, let us know your thoughts on that. I'm interested, particularly with those very familiar with the politics of Punjab. Let us know, what do you think? Is this a good thing? Or do you think, like me, there's something maybe slightly cynical behind it, that maybe it's a political step? And I talked about the politics, and there was one comment I just picked up in one of these stories, that was followed one of these stories. Rumours spread in social media is that the AAP party is what this person called the RSS's B team. Although they said that is an unproven claim. But yeah, we do know that the RSS has infiltrated most of the political organisations of the Punjab. It's infiltrated the SGPC, etc., the Shirmani Akali Dal. So this is why, again, the Sikh people within the Punjab feel that they are being disenfranchised. They are losing their democratic vote, their democratic voice, again, because of pressure and movements from infiltration from the RSS. So maybe this rumour that the AAP is the RSS's B team could well be true. Again, let us know your thoughts on that. Okay. Now, this is finally a nice story. Let me just I'll play in the background. This is, I'll show you some pictures. The voiceover's in Punjabi. But for those non-Punjabi speakers like myself, I'll tell you what this is about. This is actually a nice story. Down in Sydney, Australia, this is a new historic move. This is, here we go. Right, so this is the Australian Sikh Association and the Sikh Sangat of Sydney, who have recently inaugurated a Sikh museum in Gurdwara Sahib, Glenwood. Now, this museum hosts sections on Sikh history and heritage, and it presents through artwork the Sikh heritage in quite a unique manner. And you can see from some of the pictures, obviously, what's being shown up there. And this actual report, I do refer you to this original report. Thank you to Kalmi Awaz Radio, who actually put this report up. There you can see that's a sculpture dedicated to the Akali Dal, the Akal Takht in the Golden Temple complex after 1984's Operation Blue Star. But yes, I do refer you to this report. You can see the full video. It's all in Punjabi on Kalmi Awaz Radio, and it's journalist Mandeep Singh who's talking to a Sydney-based Sarvarinder Singh Rumi. So thank you to our Australian. I know we do now have a few viewers in Australia, so welcome to you guys. I always like to give you guys a shout out when I get the opportunity, and hopefully that story is heartwarming for you guys down in the Southern Hemisphere. Right, on that note, let's move on to our comments column. Sadly, we don't have James to bounce ideas off and bounce perspectives off, but so unfortunately, you have to stick with my comments on this today. Thank you to all our commenters who've made an awful lot of really interesting comments. Gurpreet, one of our regulars, thank you, Gurpreet, for your comment. And yes, you say, do Google this US congressional report on Air India 1985. Read it. It's a very useful document. I did actually. I have actually read it in the past, but just basically to summarise it, it comes up with all sorts of different conclusions. There is a little bit of ambiguity about how you interpret it, and it's very easy to interpret it based on your own context of how you'd like to interpret it. But it does raise basic questions about the whole situation. It does raise the whole point of CSIS burying evidence. There is clear evidence that CSIS has acted, well, I won't stretch to say unlawfully, but certainly questionably about the whole issue. In other words, this still remains unresolved who was behind this Air India bombing. It wasn't a clear-cut case of Khalistani terrorists, as is the narrative that India is trying to perpetuate on a daily basis, that there is a question who was actually behind this bombing, and it is quite likely, as journalists have uncovered, and indeed this report, you could interpret as questioning, did it actually come from India itself? Was it a false flag operation to deliberately blame it on Khalistani campaigners during the 1980s? A good question. Now, of course, we had a lot of comments after this show we did, this propaganda piece, this dreadful propaganda piece that interviewed this guy Bob Ray, who's a former Sikh, and the BJAT says, challenge to Bob Ray, if you can actually show one first information report, an FIR, against what he called Saint Bindranwale, yes, of course, Saint Bindranwale ji, as you say, I'll stand behind Bob if you can show that Bindranwale ji actually was a criminal or a terrorist, as you claim. Because, of course, this guy, Bob Rai, went to great lengths in this interview, as indeed he has done in many past interviews, to claim that Bindranwale ji was a terrorist. And yet, as the BJAT says, well, show us the evidence. There is not one single FIR against him. Even in India, where he was living, where was any single FIR? There isn't. In other words, he wasn't even just not a terrorist, he wasn't even a criminal. Go figure. So a point well made. Rupa Sandhu. Now, Rupa Sandhu features a lot in our comments column today. I'm delighted to say thank you, Rupa Sandhu, for your contributions. And you say on here, Bob Rai is a very good Sikh to make his comments. I know Khalistanis are already out to get him, as I'm not sure they agree with freedom of speech. Actually, yes, in fact, I meant to make this very point yesterday or 2 days ago when we did this show. I did actually mean to make this point. Actually, this guy, Bob Rai, actually has a total prerogative, a right under our Western democracy to make these statements. Now, as long as they don't cross the line and incite violence, and I have to say it did skirt criminality, it did skirt, some of the things he was saying did skirt actual legality. Some of the statements he made out were questionably legal or illegal. Again, I think he moves into that grey area. But ultimately, yes, I totally agree with you, Rupa Sandhu. He absolutely does have the right, as long as he doesn't cross into criminality, he does have the right to make these statements, however outrageous or offensive they may be. And unfortunately, I disagree with you, is that most, if not all Khalistanis actually do agree with his right to make these statements, but by God, they don't necessarily have to agree with them themselves. But one point there, he's not a very good Sikh. He's a former Sikh. He left the Sikh religion, according to himself, and he calls himself a former Sikh. And then he refers to his former religion as a cult of murderers and criminals, etc. So that is why, again, it was so offensive. Anyway, Saib Jotathwal says, Mocha, this is that young lad you can see, he's the so-called journalist. He's not a journalist, he's a propagandist. Mocha Bazurgan, I think his name is a former terrorist from Turkey turned journalist. Again, I wouldn't call him a journalist. Just to defame Shaheeds like Santram Bindranwale ji and by Moa Singh Gadri Babi. Yes, I don't know this guy's background. He's a very young lad, and he's really sticking his head above the parapet making these sorts of statements. But it is very very clear. I don't know if he's paid by Hindutva. It is likely, I would say, that his channel is being supported, certainly financially, from somewhere, because it's a big channel, and he does produce quite a lot of material like this, and he does interview some quite I wouldn't say powerful, but certainly some quite loud voices, and he wouldn't be doing that if he wasn't being financially supported, resourced from somewhere. One does question where that resourcing has come from. Was he a former terrorist? I don't know. I'll take your word for it. But I certainly couldn't lay that claim without any actual evidence. But anyway, thank you, Saib, for that comment. Right, moving on. Right, Rupa Sandhu. Again, this almost turns into a bit of a Rupa Sandhu and Amrit Singh show, because there was a lot of comments. Thank you to both of you for your interesting conversation, let's call it. It didn't even turn into an argument, but it turned into quite a good, interesting back and forth. Certainly, very I would say disagreements. Rupa Sandhu, first of all, made one comment saying this is talking about how that so-called Baba Khalsa Sikh who was interviewed in that show shook hands with the local police force. And is this the comment? Yes, this is the comment where you're saying, basically, as a Canadian Sikh, I've witnessed the local police behave this way. The West has an element of evil within their governments. Look at Iraq and now Venezuela. And you're saying it's the local police are basically pro-Khalistan, and they want to destabilise India. So these are very big statements to make. And I think, sadly, I have to deeply disagree with you. These are local policemen. They actually probably, in all likelihood, have absolutely no interest in the whole Khalistan cause. They don't care what it is. They don't care. All they care about is keeping law and order. They care about democracy. They care about keeping the peace. So when you say that they are pro-Khalistani and they want to destabilise India, no, they really, really don't. I suspect if you ask any single one of them, they couldn't give two hoots about Indian politics. They care about Canadian politics. They care about Canadian law enforcement, sadly. So I think that's a bit of a stretch there, Rupa Sandhu. But I do agree with you. There is an element of evil within our governments here in the West. Look at Iraq and now Venezuela. Yeah, I wouldn't disagree with you. And we are the first people to call this out. This, again, in our democracy, we can hold our government to account for these sorts of things. We can call them evil. We can take to our streets and protest about invasions of Iraq, about bombings of Venezuelan drug runners, etc. That is our democratic right, and we do that. And we do not then get imprisoned for doing so. Unlike in India, that's the point. That is the key point. That is why we are pro-Khalistan, is because Khalistan is the only democratic solution for the people in the Punjab, who sadly don't have the benefit that we enjoy. And if you're based outside India, which I think you're Canadian based, that you enjoy, that you take for granted, Sikhs in Punjab do not take that for granted, and that's the point. Amrit Singh says, Khalistan is the result of Indian Army's assault on Sri Darbar Sahib in 1984. I would slightly disagree with that. Yes, I think the Operation Blue Star was a huge recruiting sergeant, let's call it, for the Khalistan cause. Post-1984 and the genocide, of course, that followed, hugely recruited people and raised awareness of the whole Khalistan cause. But, of course, the Khalistan cause does have its roots back in the Suba movement, for example. In the earlier 20th century, the Suba movement was post-partition. And it was all about the linguistic sovereignty of the Punjab. They said, look, other states are getting effectively their own states, their own sovereignty, their at least some level of autonomy based on their Hindu religion. Pakistan got its own country, its own sovereign state based on its religion and its language, Urdu, etc. So why cannot we Sikhs, with our own Punjabi language, have our own sovereign state where we can speak our own language of Punjabi? And that was the Suba movement, which in turn, over time, sort of evolved into the Khalistan movement. So that's a little bit of historic context. So thank you, Amrit, for that point. But Rupa Sandhu says, I'm a Sikh and you're against Bhindranwale. You're ashamed of the Sikh community allowing in the Gurdwara. These are strong words. As Sikhs, we need to take responsibility. Stop blaming the Indian government for a problem that occurred by evil Sikhs. So again, you're turning the narrative saying it wasn't the Indian government that are at fault. It's the Sikhs who are at fault. We shouldn't let evil people and terrorists run our Gurdwaras. And you say the World Sikh Organisation's members need to be removed as they are terrorists or pro-killing. Wow, I think, that speaks for itself. I think every Gurdwara around the world has a picture of Bhindranwale Ji that you claim is a terrorist, he is evil, etc. And you're saying that basically the extremist terrorists have taken over the Sikh community, particularly in the Gurdwaras. I dare say our audience will have a few comments to make about that one. So, but The banter continued. Emmerich came back with an interesting comment. Again, this is an old story that we talk about all too regularly. Again, this is about the history of Hindu and Sikhism, and the argument and critics of Sikhs often say, look, Sikh is just an offshoot of Hinduism. It's not, and Emmerich has to remind us again that Hindu propagandists claim that Sikhism is it's not. The critics say it's not an independent and autonomous religion. It's an offshoot of Hinduism. It's not. Again. And again, this is something that the Hindutva try very often, is to try and claim that Sikhs, you're all just a subset of Hindus. No, they are not. And again, you just have to go back to the story of the first Guru. And Rupa Sandhu comes back to this and says, look, Guru Nanak was a Hindu. He never wore a turban. No gurus were Jats. So that first statement, Guru Nanak was a Hindu. No, he was not. This is the whole point. And even I, as a non-Sikh, who've done a lot of research into the history of Sikhism and the whole concept and the heritage of Sikhi, even I know Guru Nanak wasn't a Hindu. He was in a Hindu family. He was raised in a Hindu family, but as soon as he became old enough to think for himself, he rejected the whole caste system. As Amrit Singh points out likely, the whole Sikhi religion was originating from Guru Nanak Dev Ji's original assertion that the caste system was evil. He rejected it. That is why he established the Sikh religion. So it all stems back from that. So unfortunately, Rupa Sandhu, I've got to deeply disagree. Whether he wore a turban or not, I think is a nuance. Ultimately, that evolved as the Sikh religion resolved up until the 10th Guru, and bringing in the Khalsa, etc. Yeah, the Khalsa didn't exist for the first Guru. Are you saying, therefore, that the Khalsa is nothing to do with Sikhi, etc., etc.? So again, I think the argument doesn't stack up there, unfortunately. And then the final set between these two, and again, I have to thank these two for all your really long thought out contributions. We might not agree or disagree on bits of it, but we do appreciate the time that you spent arguing your points. Amrit Singh says, and this again is coming back to Khalistan. Look, once Khalistan's established, it will create a balance of international power, because India has so far failed in so many aspects to counteract the forces working against international peace and stability. And again, you refer to the Pahalgam attacks and the riposte from India back in May this year. Well, Rupa Sandhu comes back and says, your ignorance is amazing. Well, I think that's a bit harsh, really. Have you looked at the geopolitics of India? Khalistan would either beg to get back with India, or it would fall under Pakistan or China rule. I think that is most unlikely. And again, I would refer you, Rupa Sandhu, to all the times we talk about Khalistan and certainly the geopolitics of the area. Now, you say that, look at Kashmir, already a third of it is occupied by China. Why do you think a third of Kashmir is already occupied by China? That's nothing to do with Khalistan. It's to do with the weakness of the BJP government in Delhi. This has nothing to do with the Kashmiri people or even Khalistan. This is to do with the weakness of the Modi government, who have allowed China to incur into northwestern India, into Ladakh, into Kashmir, etc. That's the problem. So unfortunately, again, your argument doesn't really stack up. Pakistan is not an issue for Khalistanis, although Lahore is the most significant city for all the Sikhs. Yes, it is, absolutely. And we still have to establish and decide what the boundary of Khalistan will be. The hope is maybe one day it could include Lahore. But again, that is down to the final negotiations. But your whole point about that Khalistan would fall basically under the power of Pakistan or China, this is so deeply untrue. The whole point of establishing Khalistan is firstly to establish a buffer zone between Pakistan and India. It will therefore be neutral between those two nations. The fact that it actually has amicable relations with Pakistan is a bonus, but it will not be ruled or run by Pakistan. It will be run independently as a Sikh nation, under Sikh guidance and fundamental principles. That's the whole point. But it will be deeply supported by the West. It will be resourced financially, militarily, commercially, in every aspect. It will be supported by the West. And it is the West's interest to keep Khalistan basically as a foothold in that region, to keep regional peace. And I think, Rupa Sandhu, that is the bit that you clearly don't understand about the whole reason why the West should support Khalistan. And as you say, Sikh women and Sikhs in general in Khalistan will be held back from monetary, education, health and religious freedom. And again, I think this actually belies your pro-India views, seeing Pakistan as the evil neighbour. And again, this is almost like a Hindutva ideology that you're portraying here. And I think if you are a genuine Sikh, you've clearly been indoctrinated to some degree by Hindutva propaganda. Pakistan, firstly, won't control Khalistan. The whole concept of Khalistan is completely anathema to that. It's completely opposite to that. Muslims from Pakistan will be totally welcome in Khalistan, but they will not. Pakistan will not be controlling Khalistan. And I think what you're doing is you're using your anti-Islamic sentiment. And again, this is Hindutva ideology. You are using anti-Islamic sentiment of how Islam treats its women and claiming that's going to happen in Khalistan. Again, I would refer you, again, if you are a genuine Sikh, you know under Sikhi, women are treated as equals on every level, in every aspect. That is the whole point. That is the whole foundational principle of social equality that will happen in Khalistan. So again, I fail to see how you can make that point. But anyway, as I said, thank you, Rupa Sandhu. And back to your original point that you originally made, freedom of speech, absolutely. I respect your right to make these statements. It is my duty and responsibility, and James, when he's back, to hopefully educate you and try and explain to you why we believe you are wrong, and people who think like you, and of course there are many out there who do think like you, is explain to you why you are wrong and why we believe that Khalistan is a good idea. It will bring so many positive things to that region. And please do not fall for the Indian Hindutva propaganda, as many people have done so. The evil does not lie within the Sikh community. It is not the Sikh community. It certainly is not the followers of Bindram Valiji. It is certainly not in the Gurdwaras that this evil lies. There are evil amongst us. Many of it sits in our government, as you rightly point out. But we must point the finger in the right direction. And unfortunately, the evil lies in some of our own governments, but also in the Indian government, the Hindutva forces as well. So anyway, thank you for your comments. And then our final set of comments. Thank you to our final set. Bobby Bra kicks us off. Love your show. Oh, I'm delighted to say we do have a viewer, of course, as we have a few from Perth, Australia. So thank you, Bobby Bra. Thanks for your lovely comment. And I do hope our quick story about the Sydney Gurdwara at least helps you feel that you are very much part of our family here on the show. Bobby Singh, again, one of our regulars. Always look forward to watch your show. Well, I always look forward to reading all your comments. So thank you for that lovely sentiment. Avatar Dylan, again, another one of our regulars. Nice one, Angus and James. Hope you have a great Christmas. Keep up the good work. Amazing. Thanks. Indeed. Well, the same to our audience. We're almost there. Of course, it is a Christian festival, but we do know many Sikhs do celebrate Christmas, as many people do. Christmas is a wonderful time. It's a wonderful time, as we said in James's report. It is a time of giving. It is a time to think about others who are more vulnerable than us. It is a time to celebrate. It is a time of family. And again, it is a time to welcome those who are feeling lonely, sad, who are deprived, living through very tough lives. And it is the time of year when we must all really reach out to those people who need us most and who are less fortunate than ourselves. And again, our thoughts go out to all of you. And again, just to sign off the show, thank you so much for watching. It is a Surjit Kondal, Khalistan Zindabad. Thank you, Surjit, for your comments on that. And thank you to all of you who have commented. Been some really interesting comments. And again, thanks to Amrit Singh and Rupa Sandhu for your contributions, which extended to many pages on our comments column. So thank you for that. But also thank you to all of you who have commented. There's been some really great comments. Do keep them coming. We do appreciate them. Don't forget, of course, you can message us directly at message@satlugetv.com, as many of you indeed do. If you have any links or interesting stories or even rumours that you'd like us to have a look at, if you hear something on the grapevine, because obviously we do miss many things, particularly in the Punjab. If you're out there, do let us know things that we might have missed, and indeed your perspectives on stories that we raise. And that's it, though. In the meantime, thanks so much for watching, and let me press a few buttons there. We'll sign off for another day, and indeed another week for Perspectives. Hopefully James will be back with us on Monday morning, and hopefully you will be back with us on Monday morning. But thank you so much for watching. We do appreciate your loyalty. It is a goodbye from me. It is an absolute goodbye from James. Thanks so much for watching Perspectives. We will see you next time.